The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the screech of old tires on a lonely highway. A battered car slowed, its headlights flickering across the cracked road. Inside, anger brewed. A man's harsh voice echoed, "You're nothing but trouble." The door swung open, and with a rough shove, a loyal dog was forced onto the asphalt. The animal stumbled, scraping its side as the car roared away, leaving behind only dust and cruelty. Fear trembled in the dog's chest, but its eyes glimmered faintly with hope, as though searching for one kind soul who might see worth in its existence. The wind whipped across the desolate road, carrying the echo of abandonment into the night. The loyal dog whimpered, its paws trembling against the cold gravel. The world seemed darker than ever, but somewhere deep within, a spark of courage refused to die. Max wandered along the silent road, his paws dragging, his heart pounding with confusion. He remembered the car doors slamming, the roar of the engine, and the cruel words that tore through the night. His stomach growled with hunger, and his body trembled with fatigue. Yet he pressed forward, sniffing the air, searching desperately for safety. Shadows loomed across the highway, each one feeling like a threat. A distant sound of coyotes echoed, filling the silence with menace. Max whimpered softly, but kept moving, guided only by instinct and the faint spark of survival. The night grew colder, and Max's breath became visible as white puffs in the air. His body weakened, yet he refused to collapse. Each step carried the weight of rejection, but also the stubborn will to live. Memories of warm hands, once gentle but now gone, haunted his mind. He paused by a broken fence, listening to distant rustling, unsure if it was danger or safety. His eyes scanned the darkness, heart racing, longing for a place that would not betray him again. A cold breeze swept across the barren land, chilling Max's bones. He shivered and lowered his body to the ground, curling up against the fence. His ears twitched at every distant sound. "I'm dull." Though fear gripped him, exhaustion pulled him into uneasy stillness. The night stretched endlessly, but within his heart a silent plea remained. "Someone, anyone, find me." His eyes closed briefly, though his body trembled with vulnerability, waiting for dawn or doom. Far away, the faint glow of morning began to kiss the horizon. Max stirred, lifting his head weakly, his eyes reflecting both pain and fragile hope. The howls of the night faded, replaced by the distant song of early birds. For the first time since being abandoned, a fragile warmth touched his heart. His journey had just begun, but in that moment he silently vowed to survive. No matter how broken, no matter how scarred, he would not let darkness steal his chance at belonging. The dawn spread golden light across the fields as Max limped toward the town's edge. His body ached, his eyes heavy, yet his heart beat with stubborn defiance. He paused near an alley, sniffing the faint scent of food carried by the morning breeze. Hunger gnawed at him, but fear of rejection kept his paws hesitant. A small group of children passed by, their laughter echoing, but none noticed the scarred dog watching from the shadows. Max lowered his head, remembering the shove from John Miller, the sting of betrayal that still burned. His soft whimper rose with the sound of early traffic, a cry no one heard. The world bustled, yet Max remained invisible, waiting for the single human who might truly see him. Max wandered into a narrow alley, drawn by the smell of bread from a nearby bakery. His stomach growled loudly, his paws dragging over the cobblestones. From the bakery door emerged Laura Smith, her gentle eyes scanning the street. She spotted Max crouched low, trembling but watching with pleading eyes. "Oh, you poor thing," Laura Smith whispered softly, her voice carrying kindness. Max flinched at her sound, but his tail twitched faintly, as though fighting fear and hope. For the first time, warmth brushed against the cold barrier of his heart. Laura Smith knelt, her hand extending slowly, palm open with crumbs. "It's all right, I won't hurt you," she said gently. Max trembled, inching forward, nose twitching as he fought the memory of John Miller's cruelty. His eyes searched Laura Smith's face for deception, but her gaze only held patience. The air hung still as Max lowered his head, inch by inch, until his nose brushed her hand. A soft whimper escaped him, as though confessing the weight of his pain. Laura Smith's heart ached, whispering, "You're safe now." For the first time in days, Max felt the fragile thread of trust forming. Max ate the crumbs carefully, each bite hesitant, his body tensed for a blow that never came. Laura Smith smiled faintly, speaking in a soothing tone. "You're safe, sweet boy." Max's tail flickered, unsure, then wagged gently. The sound of the town carried faintly, vendors calling, carts rolling. But here, in this small alley, a bond sparked quietly. Max pressed his nose against Laura Smith's hand, and for a moment, his trembling eased. The scarred dog who had known only rejection felt the warmth of kindness, fragile but real. The world outside remained harsh, yet within this corner, safety bloomed. Laura Smith rose slowly, speaking in a warm voice. "Come with me." Max tilted his head, ears twitching, his body hesitant but his paws following as though led by instinct. Each step was heavy with doubt, but the promise of safety drew him forward. Together, they walked from the shadows into the sunlight of the waking town. Max looked up, his eyes filled with questions, and Laura Smith answered with a soft smile. For the first time, Max was not alone on the road. A fragile bond had begun, the first thread of hope in his journey toward belonging. Laura Smith led Max to her modest home, the morning sun glowing warmly, yet shadows of fear clung to him. Inside the kitchen, Max hesitated near the doorway, unsure if safety was real. Laura Smith whispered softly, "You're safe here." Max lowered his head, recalling John Miller's cruel shove, his heart torn between fear and hope. Laura Smith placed a bowl of water near him, her hands trembling slightly, praying he would accept. Max sniffed cautiously, eyes darting, expecting punishment. He took one sip, then another, his body shaking with memory and need. Laura Smith watched, her heart heavy, whispering, "No one will hurt you again." The sound of a knock at the door startled Max, his ears perking sharply as fear surged through him. Laura Smith opened the door, greeted by Emily Davis, her kind neighbor. Emily Davis said, "I heard barking. Is everything all right?" Max growled low, his body pressed against the floor, memories of cruelty burning bright. Laura Smith smiled faintly, replying, "He's been through a lot, but he's safe." Emily Davis knelt, her eyes soft with sympathy, whispering, "You're brave, little one." Max's growl faded into a whimper, his eyes unsure but searching. Later that evening, Laura Smith walked Max into her backyard, the fading sunset painting the sky. Max sniffed the grass, his tail stiff, each sound making him flinch. Laura Smith whispered, "It's just the wind." Suddenly, distant laughter and the sound of a car made him freeze, his body trembling. His mind replayed John Miller's cruelty, the car door slamming, the shove onto the road. Max barked sharply, pacing back and forth, his fear spiraling. Laura Smith knelt, holding his face gently, whispering, "No more pain, you're safe." Max's eyes softened, but his heart still carried the weight of betrayal. The following day, Laura Smith took Max on a short walk through a quiet street. Emily Davis joined, smiling as she carried a small basket. "He looks stronger already," Emily Davis said warmly. Max walked close to Laura Smith, ears twitching at each sound, his eyes alert with lingering fear. A group of men nearby laughed loudly, their tone harsh, and Max froze. His body pressed against Laura Smith's leg, growling softly. Laura Smith whispered gently, "They can't hurt you." Emily Davis placed a hand on Laura Smith's shoulder, nodding with understanding. Together they stood protectively, shielding Max from the echoes of cruelty. That night, Laura Smith sat by her fireplace, Max curled nearby, his eyes half closed but restless. She whispered softly, "You deserve love." Emily Davis visited again, sitting across the room saying, "He'll heal with time." Max lifted his head, ears twitching, as the wind rattled the windows. His scar caught the firelight, reminding both women of his pain. Laura Smith sighed, saying quietly, "I don't know what he's faced, but I'll never let him face it again." Max inched closer, pressing against her feet, his eyes filled with quiet trust. The bond deepened, yet his past still haunted every flicker of flame. The days passed, and Max grew stronger under Laura Smith's care, yet shadows lingered in his eyes. One afternoon, Emily Davis arrived with a gentle smile, carrying supplies for the shelter she supported. Laura Smith said softly, "He's different, Emily. He listens so sharply." Emily Davis crouched, studying Max's posture. His ears flicked at a distant sound, and his body tensed, not with fear but with readiness. Emily Davis whispered, "This isn't just a stray, he's been trained." Laura Smith froze, eyes widening at the revelation. Max barked once, sharply, as though confirming the truth hidden in his scarred past. That evening, Laura Smith searched through an old collar Emily Davis found near the alley. The worn tag revealed faint lettering, Service 9 Unit. Her breath caught, realizing Max once belonged to a service program. She whispered, "You were meant to protect." Max lay beside her, watching closely as if understanding her words. Emily Davis said softly, "Someone abandoned a hero." Silence hung heavy in the room as Max pressed his head against Laura Smith's hand. The revelation shifted his story from victim to guardian, a truth that changed everything about the scarred dog who refused to give up. The following morning, Laura Smith took Max to the shelter where she volunteered. Inside the quiet kennels, a fragile kitten named Daisy mewed softly, her body weak from neglect. Laura Smith whispered, "This is Daisy. She needs love, too." Max approached slowly, lowering his scarred muzzle near the trembling kitten. Daisy pressed her tiny head against him, and Max's tail wagged faintly, protective instincts awakened. Emily Davis watched, her eyes glistening, saying, "He knows he's meant to protect." The bond between the scarred dog and the fragile kitten became a living symbol of resilience, revealing hope in their shared wounds. Later that day, Max met another animal at the shelter, an older stray named Bruno, his graying fur and slow steps carrying wisdom. Bruno growled low at first, but Max stood firm, calm and steady. Bruno sniffed and then nodded, as though recognizing shared struggle. Emily Davis whispered, "It's like he understands respect." Laura Smith added softly, "Bruno could guide him too." The meeting of the scarred dog and the wise stray became more than coincidence. It was as if fate had placed them together, building a small family of survivors bound by scars, trust, and resilience. That night, Laura Smith sat with Emily Davis, watching Max sleep curled beside Daisy and Bruno. The firelight painted golden warmth across the room. Laura Smith whispered, "They found each other through pain." Emily Davis nodded, adding, "Together, they're stronger." Max stirred, his ears twitching as though guarding even in rest. Daisy nestled closer against his scarred muzzle, while Bruno lay near, his steady breath a calm rhythm. The broken pieces of their lives began fitting together. What once seemed like random suffering revealed itself as destiny. The scarred dog was no longer alone. He was protector, family, and hope. The night settled over the small town, stars hidden by heavy clouds, when a sudden crash shattered the peace inside Laura Smith's home. Glass splintered, and Max leapt to his feet, growling deep from his chest. Laura Smith gasped, rushing to protect Daisy, who trembled in her arms. Emily Davis whispered, "Someone's here." Shadows moved near the window, and the sound of footsteps grew louder. Max stood tall, scar glinting in the dim light, his body shielding Laura Smith and Emily Davis. He barked fiercely, a warning that echoed like thunder. Danger had come, but Max was ready. The door slammed open, and John Miller stormed in, his face twisted with rage. Laura Smith shouted, "Stay back!" Max snarled, teeth bared, standing like a wall of loyalty. John Miller sneered, "So this is where you've been hiding." Emily Davis stepped forward, voice trembling but firm, "Leave them alone." Max's growl grew deeper, his body coiled like a spring. Daisy whimpered softly in Laura Smith's arms, while Bruno lumbered to his feet, his old body ready despite age. In that charged moment, the house became a battlefield of love against cruelty. John Miller lunged forward, but Max launched himself with powerful force, colliding with the man. The room erupted in chaos, Laura Smith screaming, "Max, be careful!" John Miller struggled, shouting angrily, but Max stood his ground, barking ferociously. Emily Davis grabbed the phone, calling for help, her voice shaking. Bruno growled, circling protectively near the women. Daisy mewed, her tiny body pressed against Laura Smith's chest. Max's training revealed itself, his movements sharp and purposeful, defending with courage that came not from fear, but from love. John Miller shoved Max away, stumbling to his feet, fury burning in his eyes. He shouted, "You were mine, and you'll never belong to anyone else." Max barked, standing between him and the family, his body rigid with defiance. Laura Smith cried out, "He was never yours to break." Emily Davis shouted, "The police are coming!" Bruno barked beside Max, adding his aged but steady strength. Daisy whimpered, eyes wide, as the storm of conflict raged within the small room. John Miller's rage clashed against the unyielding loyalty of the scarred dog, who refused to surrender. Sirens wailed in the distance as Max lunged again, forcing John Miller back against the wall. Laura Smith shouted, "It's over, John." Emily Davis cried, "They're almost here." Max growled low, holding his ground until John Miller froze, realizing he had lost. Daisy pressed closer to Laura Smith, her tiny body trembling but safe. Bruno lay at Max's side, breathing heavily but steadfast. Max's eyes locked on John Miller, fierce yet noble, until the flashing red and blue lights painted the walls. In that moment, the scarred dog became more than a survivor. He was the protector who saved a family. The flashing lights faded as police escorted John Miller away, his rage silenced by defeat. Laura Smith trembled, clutching Daisy tightly, whispering, "It's over." Emily Davis placed a steady hand on her shoulder, saying softly, "He's safe now." Max stood near the broken window, his scarred muzzle raised proudly, chest heaving from the fight. Bruno limped beside him, letting out a tired sigh, but refusing to leave his side. Daisy mewed faintly, pressing against Laura Smith's chest as though sensing peace. For the first time, the house no longer felt broken, but filled with resilience. Later that night, Laura Smith knelt beside Max, her eyes moist. She whispered, "You saved us." Max wagged his tail slowly, pressing his scarred muzzle into her hands. Emily Davis sat nearby, smiling gently, saying, "He was meant to protect." Bruno stretched near the fireplace, his old eyes glowing with quiet approval. Daisy curled in a blanket on Laura Smith's lap, purring softly, fragile yet safe. The warmth of the fire painted them all in golden tones, turning scars into marks of strength. The broken pieces of their lives had begun to mend, stitched together by loyalty and love. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the quiet home. Laura Smith opened the curtains wide, breathing deeply, whispering, "A new start." Max stretched, his scar glinting in the golden light, his eyes filled with calm determination. Emily Davis entered carrying breakfast, smiling warmly, "For all of us." Bruno yawned, his graying muzzle brushing against Max as though passing wisdom. Daisy leapt clumsily from her blanket, pawing gently at Max's fur. For the first time since his abandonment, Max felt not like a burden but part of a family. That afternoon, Laura Smith took Max, Bruno, and Daisy to the shelter, wanting to share their survival with others. Children gathered around, their eyes bright with wonder as Max wagged his tail calmly. Emily Davis whispered, "He gives them hope." Bruno lay beside the children, allowing gentle pats, while Daisy curled in a girl's arms, purring. Laura Smith smiled, saying, "They show us scars don't define us, they guide us." In that moment, the story of the scarred dog became more than survival. It became inspiration for every broken soul who longed for healing. That evening, Laura Smith sat on her porch with Emily Davis, the stars glittering above. She whispered, "We are no longer alone." Emily Davis replied, "Because of him, we found strength." Max lay stretched at their feet, his eyes calm, watching over Daisy curled against his chest. Bruno rested nearby, his breathing steady, his wisdom lingering like an anchor. The night air was cool, but carried warmth within its silence. For the first time in a long journey, safety was no longer a dream. It was real, alive, and beating in every heart on that porch. The following morning, the world seemed new as sunlight poured across the quiet town. Laura Smith stepped outside, watching Max stretch proudly on the porch. She whispered softly, "You're our guardian now." Emily Davis joined, smiling warmly, saying, "He gave everything for us." Bruno wagged his tail slowly, his wise eyes resting on Max, as though passing an unspoken blessing. Daisy leapt clumsily into Laura Smith's arms, purring softly, her tiny frame filled with newfound trust. The scars of yesterday glimmered not as reminders of pain, but as proof of survival. Later that day, Laura Smith and Emily Davis walked with Max, Bruno, and Daisy through the town square. People paused, whispering softly as they recognized the scarred dog who had faced danger. A child asked curiously, "Is he the one who saved you?" Laura Smith answered with pride, "Aye, he saved us all." Max walked tall, his scar a badge of honor rather than shame. Daisy nestled in Emily Davis' arms, while Bruno moved steadily beside Max. The town looked at them not with pity but with awe, as survivors who turned pain into power. That evening, Laura Smith sat by the fireplace with Emily Davis, reflecting on the journey. Laura Smith whispered, "He was abandoned, but now he's family." Emily Davis replied, "Sometimes scars lead us where we belong." Max lay curled at their feet, Daisy pressed against his chest, Bruno resting nearby with heavy eyes. The fire crackled, filling the silence with warmth. The room felt whole, alive with trust and healing. Every broken piece of their story had found a place in this fragile but unshakable family. As days turned to weeks, Max transformed fully from a wounded stray into a symbol of strength. Laura Smith walked him through the fields at sunset, her laughter blending with the soft wind. Emily Davis followed, carrying Daisy while Bruno paced slowly beside her. Laura Smith whispered, "This is where we belong." Max lifted his head high, eyes fixed on the horizon, his spirit unbroken. The family walked together, no longer marked by fear, but by unshakable love. Every step carried the weight of redemption and the light of freedom. One quiet night, Laura Smith stood at the porch, gazing at the stars. Max lay curled nearby, Daisy resting gently against him, while Bruno snored softly at his side. Emily Davis whispered, "He saved a family and found his own." Laura Smith looked down at Max, whispering with a smile, "Forever our hero." Max lifted his head, eyes gleaming in the starlight, his scar shining as a mark of loyalty. The night embraced them in stillness, and for the first time, peace felt eternal. The scarred dog who was once abandoned was now loved beyond measure.